When the young zookeeper found Marula lying motionless in the corner of the enclosure, she knew immediately something was wrong. But what the gorilla troop did over the next 24 hours would shock scientists around the world and prove that grief transcends species. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one, and write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Sarah Mitchell's morning routine shattered the moment she saw the troop. They weren't foraging. They weren't playing. They were all standing completely still, staring at one spot. She moved closer to the viewing window, her heart already sinking. There, in the corner of the enclosure, lay Marula, the 35-year-old matriarch who had been the foundation of this troop for 3 decades. Sarah grabbed her radio with trembling hands. "Unit 5 to Maine. Medical emergency at gorilla habitat. I need the vet team now." But even as she said it, she knew. Marula wasn't breathing. Sarah climbed carefully onto the service path and approached slowly. One hand still gripped her radio, the other trembled at her side. When she got close enough to see clearly, her worst fear was confirmed. Within minutes, the other keepers arrived, along with Dr. Patricia Chen, the zoo's head veterinarian. Sarah watched as Dr. Chen climbed carefully into the service area and knelt beside Marula, checking for vital signs she already knew wouldn't be there. Dr. Chen pressed her stethoscope to Marula's chest, checked her pupils, felt for a pulse. After a long moment, she looked up at the gathered staff and shook her head slowly. She's gone. Probably passed peacefully in her sleep sometime around 3 or 4 this morning. No signs of trauma or distress. Her heart just stopped. A heavy silence descended over the staff. Heads bowed. One young keeper, a woman who'd worked with Marula for 5 years, turned away, shoulders shaking. Sarah wiped tears from her own eyes, trying to maintain composure, but failing. Marula had been more than just the oldest member of this family. For over 30 years, she had been their foundation. Sarah still remembered when Marula first arrived at the zoo, rescued from poachers who'd killed her mother. The traumatized young gorilla wouldn't eat, wouldn't interact with others. It took months before she began to trust again. But once she did, Marula raised 3 infants of her own, broke up countless fights, and soothed every anxiety with her presence alone. When a younger mother struggled with her firstborn, Marula had gently shown her how to hold the baby properly. When males fought, Marula would place herself between them until they calmed. Every member of the troop knew her touch, her scent, her quiet strength. Now she lay motionless, and the air itself felt different. But the gorillas had already noticed. A large silverback near the rock wall uttered a low, guttural sound. Not a threat, not a territorial call, but something different. Mournful, soft, elongated, almost like a song of grief. A younger female stood frozen, her eyes locked on Marula's body. She didn't move, didn't blink. No one in the troop made any attempt to leave. The zookeepers retreated to the outer observation area, keeping their distance. They were trained not to anthropomorphize animal behavior, not to project human emotions onto wild instincts. But this felt different. This felt like grief. Minutes stretched into hours. The troop didn't scatter or resume normal activities. Instead, they began to gather slowly, silently, around Marula's body. An adolescent male approached first, crouching low beside her. He didn't poke or prod. He simply sat, reached out one hand to touch her arm gently, then pulled back as if the coldness of her skin had shocked him. Another gorilla joined him, then another. Within an hour, a loose semicircle had formed around the body. Behind the glass, the gorillas remained absolutely still. They didn't eat, they didn't play, They only watched and waited. Inside the staff building, a heated discussion broke out. "We need to remove the body before decomposition starts," the zoo director said firmly. "It's protocol. We have health and safety regulations." Sarah, the head primate keeper, shook her head. "Look at them. They're not done yet. We can't just walk in there and take her away. It's a health risk, to them and to us." "Give them until sunset," Sarah pleaded. "Just a few more hours. They need this. I don't know what this is, but they need it." The director looked through the observation window at the circle of gorillas sitting in perfect stillness around their matriarch. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he nodded. "Sunset. Not a minute longer, and we document everything." Cameras were positioned, scientists were called, but for now no one fully understood what they were witnessing. All they knew was that a gorilla had died, and her family refused to leave her side. Hours passed. The troop remained motionless around Marula's body. Then, slowly, something began to change. A young juvenile shifted his weight and crept forward. He sat beside Marula and reached out hesitantly. Then he began to groom her, gently, methodically, his small fingers combing through fur that no longer rose and fell with breath. He didn't tug or fidget. His movements were slow, rhythmic, purposeful. He worked for nearly 20 minutes, grooming her arm, her shoulder, her face, as if trying to bring her comfort one last time. Keepers watching through the observation window exchanged glances. One lifted a camera slowly, capturing the moment. Then a large female approached from behind, stepping carefully as if the ground itself had become sacred. She paused at Marula's side, then lowered her head and pressed her forehead against Marula's back. Her eyes closed. She stayed there for several minutes before finally retreating. It wasn't chaos, it wasn't confusion. It was organized, deliberate, like a ceremony. One by one, each member of the troop stepped forward. Some touched Marula's hand. Some pressed their heads against hers. Others simply crouched nearby, bodies still, present. The silverback who had first vocalized his grief now knelt at the edge of the group. He beat his chest once, then twice. But this wasn't the thunderous display of dominance gorillas are known for. This was slower, measured, like a heartbeat, like a farewell. The staff remained frozen at their observation posts. No vocalizing, no aggression, one noted aloud. "It's coordinated," another whispered. "It's mourning," said a third, quietly. Then, as the afternoon sun began its descent, something even more remarkable occurred. A young female walked slowly toward a low-hanging branch near the eastern wall. She reached up and pulled a single green leaf from the stem, then another and another. She gathered them against her chest, cradling them carefully, then turned and walked back toward Marula's body. The observation room fell completely silent. She knelt beside Marula and with incredible gentleness placed the first leaf over Marula's shoulder. She smoothed it down with her palm. The second leaf went across Marula's hand, the third on her chest. Each placement was deliberate, thoughtful, tender. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's covering her." Then another gorilla joined her, bringing a small branch, then another with more leaves. Soon, more began to participate. Others joined, bringing leaves, twigs, straw from their bedding. They worked together with quiet purpose. Layer by layer, the coverage grew until Marula was almost completely hidden beneath what they had created. What they were building wasn't random. It had structure, care, intention. By late afternoon, Marula was almost completely covered. Her torso, her arms, her legs, all hidden beneath the layers the troop had so carefully constructed. Even her face was gently obscured by the softest leaves. Only one hand remained partially visible, resting on the ground near her side. Then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times around the world. A very young gorilla, barely 3 years old, small and still learning, had been sitting at the back of the group throughout the entire ritual. He'd watched everything with wide, confused eyes, too young to fully understand death, but old enough to sense that something profound was happening. Now, finally, he stood up on unsteady legs and moved forward, weaving between the adults who gently made space for him. He walked to the very edge of the habitat, where wild grasses grew near the enclosure wall. There, among the green blades, was a single yellow dandelion, bright, cheerful, standing alone. He reached down carefully and plucked it, holding the delicate stem in his small hand. He stared at it for a moment, turning it slightly, as if considering what it meant, what he should do with it. Then he turned and made his way back across the enclosure, the flower clutched carefully in his fist. Every adult gorilla watched him. Every keeper in the observation room held their breath. Cameras focused. Time seemed to slow. The young gorilla approached Marula's covered body and stood there, looking down at the one exposed hand still visible beneath all the leaves. He tilted his head, confused, uncertain. Then, with movements so gentle they seemed impossible for someone so young and clumsy, he knelt down and placed the yellow dandelion beside Marula's hand. Not on it, not covering it, beside it, as if offering her something beautiful, as if saying goodbye in the only way he knew how. He sat back on his heels and made a small sound, soft, questioning, heartbreaking. He looked from the flower to Marula's hand and back again, as if confused why she wasn't responding to his gift. Then something remarkable happened. The silverback, who had been sitting several feet away throughout the entire ritual, slowly rose and approached the young gorilla. He knelt beside him and gently placed one massive hand on the small one's shoulder, a gesture of comfort. The young female who had started the leaf-covering ritual came forward too. She sat on the other side of the young gorilla and very carefully touched the dandelion with one finger, as if acknowledging the gift, honoring it. Finally, the young gorilla stood, his small shoulders sagging, and walked back to the group. 2 adults immediately wrapped their arms around him, pulling him close as he pressed his face into their fur. In the observation room, there wasn't a dry eye. Sarah had both hands pressed against her mouth, tears streaming between her fingers. The director was crying openly. Even the security guard who'd only come to help manage the crowd stood frozen, his face wet. "That's love," someone whispered. "That's just love." The troop had finished. One by one, they stepped back from Marula's covered body. Some turned away. Others lingered a moment longer, but no one touched her again. They formed a loose semicircle several feet away and sat facing her, facing the leaves and branches and the single yellow flower, and they simply stayed, silent, still, present. For nearly an hour no one moved. The only sounds were the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional soft breath of a gorilla keeping watch. Sarah radioed the director quietly. "They haven't eaten all day. They haven't moved. They're just sitting with her." The response was equally quiet. "Let them stay as long as they need." As the sun set, the young juvenile who had placed the dandelion stood once more. He walked slowly to the highest rock in the enclosure and climbed to the top. He turned his back to the troop and faced the fading light. Then he raised his chin and let out a long, low cry. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it was mournful and clear and unmistakable. It was goodbye. The other gorillas remained seated, watching him. Some lowered their heads, the silverback closed his eyes, and as the cry faded into the evening air, a profound silence settled over the entire habitat. 3 days later, the zoo planted a memorial tree just beyond the enclosure fence. A small brass plaque was placed beside it. Marula, matriarch, guardian, beloved. Inside the habitat, the young juvenile who had placed the flower sat nearest to the fence, his hand pressed gently against the ground where Marula had lain. The troop was different now, quieter, gentler with each other. They sat closer during meals, groomed more often. Something inside them had shifted. Within 2 weeks, they began to play again, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. Life was moving forward, as it always does, but they carried something with them now, a memory. Word spread quickly. The world watched, moved by what they'd witnessed. But for Sarah and the keepers who had been there, it was never about science or breaking new ground. It was about watching a family say goodbye to someone they loved. And every person who walked past that memorial tree paused a little longer, looked a little deeper. Because what they'd witnessed was a reminder that love and grief belong to more than just one species, and that sometimes the smallest gesture, a yellow flower placed beside a motionless hand, can say everything that words cannot. Did you enjoy this story? After watching what these gorillas did for Marula, do you believe animals grieve and feel loss the same way we do? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.